We were expecting another Apple event before the end of the year, but we did not expect it to just be sprung up on us like it was. The Apple Unleashed event for October 18th is official, and that means we have a lot to talk about. But before we get to all of that, I'm here with Robert Rosenfeld. Thanks for joining. We also want to hear from you. We have the Apple Circle podcast hotline, which is a number that you can call or text, leave us questions. We have a few questions that we'll get to later in the show. And that's just a way for you guys to interact. And we seem to answer pretty much all of them. So you can ask, and there's a pretty good chance you'll actually end up on the show. But the number for that, if you want to contact, is 949-354-3508. And don't worry, no one's going to answer on the other end. You could just leave a voicemail if you want to talk, or you could just text. Any of that works, and we will answer it on the show. But yeah, a new Apple event. Man, I knew we were expecting this, but I didn't expect it this week.
I was putting money, or I would have put money, on October 26th. The Tuesday made sense. The end of the month made sense. And it was funny because I saw this debate on Twitter yesterday morning. There's always, it seems like every Tuesday people are like, oh, we're going to get invites. And some people are like, oh, well, there's this feeling you get when invites go out, and that feeling wasn't in the air. And I was just doing something. I think I was in Final Cut. I look away from Twitter for 5 minutes. I look back, and then the timeline is flooded with Apple invites went out, event happening. I am really surprised about that Monday event. And here's my question for you, Matt. Was Apple planning to do Monday all along? Or do you think this was a concession to the Google event happening on Tuesday? And follow up to that, if you do think it's the latter, not the former, was this Apple being nice to Google, saying, we're going to give you the spotlight for the day? Or do you think that they knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew by doing it on Monday, they'd sort of own the news cycle for the week?
Well, I mean, there's a few ways to look at this. So on Tuesday, October 19th, Google is announcing the Pixel 6. And from all the rumors and everything, well, it's not even rumors. They've announced the phone basically, but they're going to go into detail about everything, talk about when it's coming out, pricing, all that stuff. But this is a huge deal for Google. And everything that we've seen is that this is kind of their last hurrah, their Hail Mary for the Pixel device. So, there was that question, is Google going to do the event that same day? Because they usually do them on Tuesdays. Obviously not. They're doing it Monday. I think there's a few ways to look at this. Obviously, they're not going to do it the same day as Google just because they don't need to. They don't need to have the battling news cycle. Honestly, it probably would have made, if they want to one up Google, I think it makes more sense to do it on Wednesday. Let Google have their time, and then Wednesday, everyone's going to forget about the Pixel. We're going to talk about all the Apple stuff. On Monday, maybe there's a chance that the Pixel comes out and everyone forgets about all the Apple stuff. There's the chance there. But also, we're expecting a phone from Google, and we're expecting computers and stuff from Apple. So I don't know how much it really competes with itself. I think the more interesting thing that we kind of mentioned to each other in the chat yesterday was, is Apple actually trying to hide the Apple Watch? So we're going to talk about it a little later, but the embargo's lifted for the Apple Watch Series 7 today, when we're recording this, which is Wednesday. And on Friday, when you are listening to this, when this goes live, the Apple Watches will actually arrive. But that gives us half a week before the news cycle on the Apple Watch is dead. And I think that actually makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when we want to. Do you want to talk about Apple Watch first, and then get to the event?
We can just. There's not that much to talk about, so let's just talk about it now.
Yeah. So here, and I guess here's what we have to say: embargoes dropped, and what you expected was basically it. It's not a significant change. Matt and I were just kind of talking briefly before who we watched, which embargo videos we watched, because they all come out at the same time, and then everybody sort of picks who they're going to watch. I think we both watched Marquez's video because, of course, Marquez. He's the GOAT. He's great. And it was basically the consensus of larger screen, nice to have, faster charging if you use the proper wattage USB-C brick and that USB-C cable. And that's sort of it. A little bit brighter in standby mode. I think that it, kind of like we speculated before, it really makes a lot more sense if you're coming from, I think, anything before a 5. So a 4, a 3, a 2. It's going to be a good upgrade. But if you have definitely a Series 6, I just do not see a compelling reason to upgrade. One of the things that kind of took me by surprise as well is that I had assumed that the bigger display would be a bigger deal, but from sort of the consensus I've seen online, it seems like it's there, but it kind of really depends on what you do on that Apple Watch if the display is really going to be noticeable. I remember when the 3 to the 4 transition happened, that larger display was a really big deal. That doesn't seem to be the case this year, right?
Yeah, it seems like, it's noticeable, but it's not the things that you can do with that display seem very minor. When they went from the 3 to the 4, there were many more watch faces and different things that I feel like just made a bigger difference. Even though I guess if you look at it, when the 3 to the 4, what did they change with that bigger screen? They gave you new watch faces. We got the modular one where you can get like a really big complication on there. I'm trying to think what else. What else did we get on that bigger screen besides just being able to see everything better?
I mean, I guess it wasn't a whole lot, but it was a 2mm difference. So you were going from 40 to 42. So this is, half that. It's a 1mm difference.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it's not as big of a deal.
Yeah, and then I heard Marquez in his video saying like when they push everything to the edge, which is kind of one of the big design features of this, you kind of get some reflections and stuff like that. Basically, the screen, I would say, is actually not the reason to get it, which is why everyone initially thought maybe that would be the reason. Like that's the one reason to get the Series 7 is because you want the bigger screen. I think that maybe isn't the case, and after we use it for a little bit, we're both getting them. We'll be able to confirm that. But I think the bigger reason to get this watch is because the watch you have now doesn't work or has an issue with it. And for a lot of people, if you have an Apple Watch, you probably don't have a reason to get the Series 7 because unless it like cracked or one of your buttons doesn't work or something like that, I mean, it's going to do basically the same stuff.
And I will say, just for the last time, I will not go down the rabbit hole, but I think this also, like we just said, with the event being on Monday and embargoes lifting today and the release on Friday, I think Apple's trying to hide the Apple Watch. I don't see how this is a coincidence. There are so many little pieces now that add up together that make this just a weird year. I have heard the counter argument to that is that, well, the Apple Watch usually launches with the iPhone, so it usually doesn't get a whole lot of coverage anyways, but this year, there is so much weird about this.
That.
I definitely think this was done intentionally to sort of move right on to the next thing and not do too much with the Series 7, just because the comparison page wasn't live. The pre-orders was really a weird experience. I don't know, just too many weird coincidences for me this year to buy the original story. Matt, has your opinion changed at all since all these things are sort of sorting? I can't even speak here. Has your opinion changed because all this stuff is sort of starting to come together?
I mean, not really. This is basically what I expected. And the thing that I'm excited for is that I did end up ordering the stainless steel model, although it was very annoying because I wanted the silver stainless steel, not the black, because I had the black before when I had the Series 2, and I liked the way it looked and everything, and it actually was very durable for stainless steel, but you couldn't really tell it was stainless steel. So at that point, it's like, what's the point? Like, I'm buying it for the finish, and if it's black, might as well just get the space gray, or I guess midnight is what they call it now. So yeah, I ended up ordering a silver stainless steel, but the only band they had available that wasn't like a clasp, which are just not the ones that I want. I wanted like a silicone band. Well, they didn't have that. They only had the solo loop in a bright yellow. That was the only one I could buy on ship or to be shipped. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I can't even. That was the only one I could buy to be shipped at all. That had a band that I was semi happy with, and that's not even getting here until November 2nd. So I did end up ordering, because we're crazy people like this. I ended up ordering a green aluminum sport with a solo loop as well. And that's coming here tomorrow or Friday. So I'll be able to experience it, but my full experience won't happen until November. And then that's when I think I'll be kind of happy, because it'll be different than what I have now. Besides that, though, I'm just not really that excited. So what did you order?
I've said it once, I'll say it again. The Apple Watch ordering process is awful, and pre-ordering it at 5 o'clock in the morning on Friday was awful.
Yeah.
The one issue I had is actually the store opened pretty fast and you could jump in.
Yep.
But I had no idea. I was so used to the traditional band. I'm not even sure what they call the band. Just the one with like the little predetermined notches for the holes.
The silicone one, yeah.
The silicone one. Well, now with the Solo Loop, there was all that controversy about the band size, and I go to pre-order and it says, "Okay, time to take a measurement of your wrist, and so you can know which size is right for you." And I'm like, I have no idea what my wrist size is. I got to get this ordered, and I don't have time to sort of sit here and find something to measure my wrist. So I just put an order in for like whatever. I'm like, 3, 4, I don't know what it is. I'll just make an order, and then I went back and tried another one, and what I landed on was. Never even heard of this one. It's just the leather link. I went with the aluminum 45 millimeter with the green leather link. So kind of a green on brown, which I actually think looks good. That's like the one they have kind of on the splash page.
That's what I ordered too. That's what I ordered too. Now that I think about it, the green one that's what I ordered. I thought it was a silicone Solo Loop, but now that you bring it up, I actually got the one with the ridges, right? And you can like put the magnet.
Yeah, the brown. Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
I thought that combo looked really good.
I thought it looked really good too, and I think the difference was only like $40 or $50 for that, I guess, higher end band. So, and I've definitely, after experiencing a lot of third party bands, I do think it's worth it to go with the Apple bands
it's hit or
in
miss.
A lot of situations. So that's what I went with, and I canceled the other one. And that pre-order process was okay, but I still hate how you have to order the Apple Watch. Speaking of Apple Watch, though, super fan of Apple Circle, Brad, who has always been a team player, always has been in our corner. Brad, thank you very much. He actually ordered his very first Apple Watch with the Series 7. Let me take a quick look here and see what Brad ordered here. Brad ordered a aluminum Series 7. I don't know what color he got. So Brad... Midnight. There you go. Midnight aluminum. That's what I was going to go with as well. And he asks a couple of things. First off, is Applecare worth it? And also any kind of tips and tricks for a first-time Apple Watch owner. So Matt, why don't you kick us off with some tips for Brad?
Well, I would say, first of all, is Applecare worth it? Probably, although I've actually never gotten it for an Apple Watch, and I've never really thought about it until this question. I don't know why I never thought about it until now, but it probably does make sense, because if there's one product that is always banging up against walls, hitting things, I drop it occasionally when I take it off. It's the Apple Watch. Now, luckily, it's actually held up really well, but there are plenty of people who have cracked their screens, they've scratched them, do all kinds of stuff, so it probably is worth it. This is one of those devices that is going to be everywhere with you, and it's on your wrist, so there's that time where you might just go bam, and crack the screen or something. So it's probably worth it. As far as tips, man, for a first-time Apple Watch owner, you know what I'm going to say is dial in your notifications, because at first it's just going to be ding city. It's going to be ding, 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 ding. Every single thing is going to go onto your watch, and you'll find that there's not all that many notifications that you really care about. So the ones that you care about, make sure those go to the watch. The rest, turn them off. I would also say, check out third-party apps, but don't think that third-party apps are the saving grace of this watch. There are some apps that I use. Last week I talked about how when I picked up the 13, I forgot about the Tesla phone key. So I have a Tesla app on here, and that was great because I needed it at the time. So it's one of those things I use every once in a while. That's kind of how I see apps on the watch, is every so often you're going to need one or want to use one, but I wouldn't go crazy, but try them out. I mean, there may be something that you find. And then just go crazy customizing the watch faces, because even though there are no third-party watch faces, there are quite a few different combinations of things that you can do, and some interesting tweaks and changes that you can do to make a watch face look a different way than you might expect it to up front. What about you? What are some tips?
Yeah, I've seen so many different uses for the Apple Watch. Some people really dial it in as a utility. Some people like the fashion. Some people like the health stuff. So it kind of really depends what your use case is. I agree with Matt. I have never gotten Applecare on the Apple Watch, and it is definitely one of those things that just gets scratched up and dinged and dented. Looking at my Series 5, and it's actually held up pretty well. I'm sure I've got micro scratches on the display. I've got some little just gaffs in the aluminum at the bottom, but overall it held up pretty well, but it's going to get a little rough and tumbled up. So just kind of keep that in mind, though I still don't know if I'd buy Applecare on it. I don't know. For the Apple Watch, I feel like...
It seems like something that you should buy Applecare on, but for whatever reason, I just haven't cared to.
I think that if I don't know, I'm split on it. I guess I've never been in a situation where I've needed it, where I've like had some kind of catastrophic issue. I also feel like I usually hold on to my watch for at least like 2 or 3 years or longer. And I feel like at that time, I feel like I've gotten my value out of it originally and just didn't see the need to pay the extra premium for Applecare. So I'd have to, honestly, I don't even know what the price is for Applecare on the Apple Watch. I'd have to look, but I probably wouldn't do it. So I'm sure Matt'll, I don't know,
Well,
Matt, do you agree? Do you not agree? I
would say
I don't see it.
Yeah, I would say you have, what is it, 30 or 90 days? I can't remember exactly, but you have a little bit of time after you buy the product to think about it. If you start wearing it and you think you're going to like really ruin this thing just by your day-to-day life, then it's probably worth it. If not, I don't know. I've never needed it. I've never had an issue with it.
I would say if you're going to put it in like a big bulky case, just get Applecare because you don't want some big bulky thing on your wrist. Yeah. But I guess it all just depends on your usage. If you're okay with the occasional scuff and scratch, it's okay. But if you're like really like, I'm going to go, I don't know, dirt biking on this, I'm going to be like in the mountains with rocks and rock climbing. If you know that you could be in a situation where this thing could shatter into a million pieces, and maybe it's worth it. Some other tips and tricks, I guess. I totally agree with Matt. Look at some of the good third-party apps. I just have never gone overboard because they're just not very good. I think Auto Sleep is my favorite. It's a good third-party sleep tracking app. I was using Dark Sky, but now the built-in weather app is really good. And then just get into the app and kind of dial in your complications in your watch face. And that's really been the biggest thing for me, is I just love having just this dialed in watch face that has all the information I need at a glance. And I can do things really easily. I can make a text or send a text. I can make a call. I can look at the weather, all really easy. And I do wish that more apps would get better. There are still, Apple Watch apps are a bit limited, but one of the best things about Apple Watch for me is just knowing that if a notification comes in, good or bad, I can just look at it on my wrist and see what it is. It can be a little overwhelming sometimes, and you can kind of get it, like Matt said, in Ding City, but once you kind of have it for a while, you dial it in, I think you'll really start to see the value of that watch on your wrist.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, really, I think that's it for the Apple Watch this week. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it once we have it in our hands or on our wrists and give you our impressions, but yeah, there's just not much about it. What's much more exciting is the Unleashed event.
Yes.
We already said we weren't really expecting this so soon, but now that it's coming, I think, everyone loves to dissect the event invites and everything like that. For the California Streaming event, it seemed like they were just bored and they wanted to go record other places. That's what the California meant. This one, though, seems like it's definitely hinting at speed, new processors, and obviously Macs. So
Absolutely.
What are we expecting to see here?
Big story here. Finally, it's been like rumored for years, it seems like. New MacBook Pros. So 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros. And this is positioned to be the most significant change since the last sort of major overhaul back in 2016. And that was a big year for the MacBook Pro, and Apple made some good decisions with that laptop. But they also made some really bad mistakes that have haunted them for years that they're finally going to fix. So I guess the first thing, kind of the first big part of this laptop, is the port situation. Remember that USB-C transition, Apple caught a lot of flack for that because while they were right, and they did push the industry forward to USB-C, definitely, it led us all to this like dongle hell we've been in for years, where if you wanted to plug in a USB-A device or an SD card or go out to a monitor, Ethernet, you just had to have a dongle. It's been nice that more products and accessories have adopted USB-C, but it also has been a little frustrating if you don't have the right port or the right dongle you need at the specific time. I know, Matt, we've talked about this before. I think the best accessory my MacBook Pro has connected to it right now is the little CalDigit dock. The magic box that gives you USB-A, USB-C, SD card, HDMI, or DisplayPort. I mean, it's got like all this stuff built in. That looks to be now fixed or a little bit corrected here on the new MacBook Pros. The ports now are going to be USB-C, sort of a mix of USB-C, along with a full-size HDMI port, a full-size SD card slot, headphone jack, and also Magsafe charging. Now, this is not wireless Magsafe like on the iPhone. This is the original MagSafe back with the older MacBooks and MacBook Pros. That was the magnetic charging cable that sort of would easily detach if you stepped on the cable. You wanted to pull it out quickly and get the laptop in your bag. It was really nice. I don't know if they're going to allow for both MagSafe and USB-C, or if this MagSafe is like a proprietary USB-C, like a specialized magnetic port, or if it's different. I'm not sure what it is, but how you feeling about those ports, Matt? How are we feeling so far about these changes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those ones who doesn't really care for HDMI. I don't really see the need for it necessarily, but I know there's people that definitely do. For us who make videos for a living, having that SD card reader back, that is a godsend. Like, that's going to be amazing. Now, MagSafe, that's interesting because when MagSafe was first announced, and that's kind of what we had on MacBooks, I mean, that was probably one of the best features of a MacBook. I remember when I had my very first MacBook ever, that black Core 2 Duo MacBook back in the day.
Same.
That was one of those features that I would show people and they'll be like, wow, that's a great feature. Because if you've used any other laptop, or now even the current laptops, it happens. It doesn't necessarily happen all the time, but there are those times where we accidentally pull the cable and the laptop, maybe it doesn't go flying off the table, but it gets pulled a little bit. It maybe tweaks the port a little bit. It has happened to probably everyone, and MagSafe was just the solution for that. Now, yeah, the question, what is this MagSafe going to look like? What are you going to be able to do with it? I just really hope that we can still charge with USB-C. Because this is kind of the way I see it is I would love to use MagSafe around the house. I'm taking my computer, upstairs, downstairs, quickly detach, reattach, all that kind of stuff. But when I'm traveling, I have really gotten used to the ability to use one cable for pretty much all my devices. I've transferred over to wireless charging with my AirPods, with my iPhone. So I don't really need USB-C there, even though it is a Lightning port. Like, I would like to see it, obviously, but I don't need it because I've transferred over to wireless charging even when I'm traveling. And everything else I use, my iPad, my MacBook, my cameras, my everything I use is USB-C. So if I would need to also then bring a charging brick with MagSafe for the laptop, that would not be great. Although I'm glad that it seems like it's coming back. Another thing with the charging brick or charging cable is the charging brick. There's supposed to be a new brick with it. One thing that I'm wondering is it going to have Ethernet built in like the iMac does? That would be an interesting way to add another port but not have to have it in the computer. I use Ethernet all the time, so it would be nice. I don't know if we're actually going to see that, but yeah.
I hope so. I don't know. The Ethernet on the iMac makes sense. I don't know why they do it that way on the MacBook Pro. The only downside to MagSafe is kind of its biggest flaw was that it was proprietary and it was expensive to replace. Like,
right.
If that cable broke or any part of it broke, you had to pay basically $100 to get that new brick. Now with USB-C, things are a little bit more ubiquitous and you don't have to use an Apple branded cable and an Apple branded charger to charge your laptop. So hopefully they keep both of those things around. But hey, more ports, the merrier. I'm very happy to see that on the MacBook Pro.
Well, real quick,
yeah.
What if it was a MagSafe to USB-C cable? So you just have the same kind of brick, but you plug in USB-C. The other end is MagSafe, though. So it's like that's the only part that is proprietary, and you can easily
I could see that for sure. I could see that for sure. And I think that, you know what? Best of both worlds. You have the MagSafe port, and you still allow for charging over USB-C, which I definitely think makes sense. Case closed. What's the complaint? You can do both.
No issues. Yep.
So now the other story here is a redesign or a potential redesign. What I've heard is that the bezels are going to get slimmer. There might not be the MacBook Pro insignia sort of text at the bottom under the display. The MacBook Pros still look already very modern and sleek. What other design changes do you think Apple would do? Or do you think it's just going to be a little bit tweaked, a little bit more modern of the design we've got right now?
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be just a tweak. Everything they have, I'm using the 16-inch MacBook Pro right now, the current one, and every change that they made to this is really good. Like the speakers are excellent, the keyboard is great. They fixed that. If they really there's nothing wrong with the screen, but if they update the screen, make those bezels a little smaller, really add those ports back, I think that's a killer machine right there. One thing, though, I can easily see them doing, the rumors have gone back and forth on this, is the touch bar. Is it going away? Is it staying?
Yep.
I have a feeling they're getting rid of it. Yeah.
I think the touch bar, unfortunately, is gone, and it
Or
was a nice
fortunately.
idea. But yeah, I don't know. I never used it. I only had issues with it. I always felt like it took me longer to do things than it would with the touch bar. Or I guess without the touch bar on there, it was quicker without the touch bar, more cumbersome with the touch bar. I know you didn't mind the touch bar as much as I did, but it looks like it's going to be going away. So I mean, the keyboard's always already gotten better. So good keyboard, no touch bar, better ports, slight redesign. The other big story here, besides kind of the main star of the show here with the laptop, is the display. So
Yep.
rumors indicate mini LED panels. So they're bright, they're vibrant, they're colorful, basically getting closer to the benefits of OLED, like you can kind of darken more specific areas of the display without the costs of OLED. That is in the pipeline, but not expected to be on this year's sort of lineup of MacBook Pros. And then a very interesting last minute rumor here that we had speculated on before that might actually happen is 120 hertz. This is coming from display analyst Ross Young, who has been correct on multiple occasions. He says 120 hertz is coming to the MacBook Pro. Now, distinction here, he says 120 hertz, not ProMotion. And the question is this going to be a locked 120 hertz display, or is it going to be ProMotion technology, which can ramp up and ramp down depending on what you're going to do? I mean, we've seen ProMotion in the 13 Pro. We have it in the iPad Pro. Doesn't it make sense for the MacBook Pro?
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't be a ProMotion display. And from the rumors that I saw, at least, it seems like this new mini LED display is from the same supplier and basically the same thing as what we have in the current 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which I'm looking at right now. And that has ProMotion, 120 hertz. I don't see any reason why. Well, let's put it this way. It's definitely going to be possible. Whether or not they do it, I think they will. And, you know, one of the benefits of the M1X platform, or, well, we didn't even talk about that yet, but the M1X, which is supposed to be in this computer, is the power efficiency and all that stuff. And it has the timing controllers and all that kind of stuff for the display, or it will have that ability at least. So why not have ProMotion? Another thing I just thought about, the iPad Pro, which I totally forget about because it's so useless in the iPad Pro, but the iPad Pro has the M1 chip in it. So obviously there's a way to make that work. I don't see why they wouldn't do that in the MacBook Pro. I don't know how much I care. It's like one of those things. I'm totally used to it on my iPad and my iPhone. My eyes don't see it. I even went as far as to turning it off on the iPhone just to see like what the difference was. And I'm telling you, after 2 days, it's gone. I turned it back on and it was nice for like another 20 minutes and then I'm used to it again. I wonder if that will be the same thing on the MacBook Pro because it's such a big display. I think it will, but I know it's something people would want.
Yeah, it really just, I guess, if they can ramp up and ramp down for that efficiency, then that definitely seems to make sense, and it would definitely be good for battery life. And I'm very curious. I mean, we've seen high refresh rate displays on laptops before. I've never really spent a lot of time with them, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense for my use case because my MacBook Pro is right here and it's closed, and I have it just docked to other displays.
That's true,
so
yeah.
if you're in laptop mode a lot and you see the benefit, then maybe, but I'm very curious to see what that would look like and what the benefits would be on the MacBook Pro line. And then, of course, sort of the star of the event is the next-gen Apple Silicon. This is expected to be the M1X processor. So we have the M1, which is sort of the very powerful, but also more consumer-focused chip in the Mac Mini, the MacBook Air, the iMac, and then the lower-end sort of 13-inch MacBook Pro. And now the M1X is supposed to be a more pro-focused processor. So rumor is it's going to have 10 cores, 8 high-performance cores, and 2 efficiency cores, and then options for 16 or 32 cores of GPU processing. I mean, I don't need to be a Geekbench expert or a spec sheet expert to know that I'm sure this thing is absolutely going to fly, and I cannot wait to see just what this chip can do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, really what we have been wanting, because we've both used the M1 computers before, and considering they are really entry level, like that's the goal with these computers, they are excellent. I mean, we can basically do our entire job on them, and that includes pretty heavy 4K video editing, all that stuff. It works relatively bug-free and issue-free on these lower-end computers. So having an M1X is something we're really excited about. But that still leaves the question that I think all of us have been asking for, and I think according to the rumors, we have the answer. We'll have to see, though, is the GPU situation. So, I mean, it's a laptop, so like the internal GPU, the built-in one, is probably going to be fine. But we've been wanting to know what Apple's plan is for either a dedicated GPU or for computers that require GPU performance. That is definitely more so for the more, performance desktops. So if they made an iMac Pro, or when that Mac, the actual Mac Pro gets updated, that I think is when we'll see the upgrade to GPUs. But I'll be interested to see what the GPU performance is here, even though it seems like it's still just going to be built into the chip.
Yeah, I'm really curious on that as well, as someone who uses an external GPU just to kind of help speed up Final Cut rendering and such. I'm very curious to see what that performance would be like, but maybe Apple doesn't have to play by the rules or the same rules as other manufacturers. Right. Maybe they've been able to have some breakthroughs with this M1X that says, hey, we have, everything just kind of built into one chip, but look at the performance we're able to get. I guess, graphics has always not really been Apple's strong suit, at least on the Mac line. So I'm really curious to see if this sort of supercharges the experience and sort of makes it flawless. I hope so, at least. I mean, if you can just do seamless 4K video rendering, exporting, running multiple monitors on this new MacBook Pro and this M1X chip, then I'm all in.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I don't really care what the solution is. As long as the solution works, I'm happy. And I think they're going to do pretty well. What else are we going to see at this? So that's the MacBooks. These have been rumored forever, but the Mac Mini is really the only other thing that we're really expecting when it comes to computers, right?
Yeah, it's so weird because it's been rumored forever, and it seems like Apple's almost giving us everything we've wanted and what have been asking for. But when you kind of lay it out like that, it's like, that's it? So new MacBook Pros, new chips, okay, that's great. But there's got to be at least one more thing at that event, or at least maybe two more, because I'm not sure how they're going to lump the MacBook Pros together, or if they're going to do a section just on the MacBook Pros themselves and then on the M1X. So at least one more thing. We had speculated that the other M1X machine that made sense was a new Mac Mini, which would be really nice to see. We know that's in the works. We don't know how close that is to actually launching or not. But what seems to be like the done deal, like the next thing to launch at that event, along with new MacBook Pros, is surprisingly AirPods 3. And we've talked about this before as well. There's really not a whole lot here to get excited about. It's a slightly tweaked design, slightly tweaked battery case. Hopefully you get some better battery life and acoustics built in, but nothing crazy. If you had AirPods 2, if you've had AirPods 2 for this long, or even original AirPods, then this is probably going to be a fantastic upgrade. But if you have AirPods Pro, this doesn't seem like a move to make going down. It just seems like sort of a refresh in the AirPods lineup. I'm not even sure if it's worthy of being at the event, but that seems to be like the only other thing in the rumor mill that seems to be making sense to launch at that October 18th event.
Yeah, and those have been rumored forever. Like, we were expecting them at the September event. That didn't happen. We were expecting them before that even. That didn't happen. And then we were even expecting, like, maybe they're just going to do a press release and it's just going to be the new AirPods, because I don't think any of the features are really different. It's just the design. But who knows? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't actually see the AirPods 3 and that still ends up being like a press release thing. Although it does make sense for the AirPods to be out for the holidays. That's kind of what made AirPods really popular, is that holiday season, and then everyone like started using them because they got them for Christmas and stuff. So I could definitely see them being released for that. But I mean, so two things really? Like, is that all we're gonna see?
I mean, of course, there's always like speculation, like, oh, will we see the iMac Pro? Will we get a glimpse of the Mac Pro, new MacBook Air? All this stuff is in the works, but not only is it probably not ready, but these are not M1X computers. Oh, I guess, okay, maybe the iMac Pro could be an M1X Mac, but that doesn't seem to be ready, at least as of right now. The Mac Pro is probably going to be a special chip, maybe a modified M1X or maybe the M2X, and they'll probably wait till the end of the transition to release that. And then the new MacBook Airs, we've heard that's going to be a modified M1, and it's also not ready, so I guess you sort of have pretty even odds across the board. If I had to make a prediction, it'd be Mac Mini, but who knows? I mean, I guess it's kind of a fair sort of chance of all of them coming or none of them coming. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess Apple could just do MacBook Pros and call it a day, but it seems like there should be at least one more thing at that event. I don't know, though.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the Mac Mini might be released just because they're refreshing the MacBook Pros, which there's already M1 variant of that. Then they could refresh the Mac Mini and really do something different with the design. And I feel like that is not nearly as hard as doing a iMac Pro or doing a Mac Pro or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we might be able to see it. The question I have, though, is for this Mac Mini, whether it's coming on Monday or not, is it going to be more pro-focused or is it going to stay more home-focused? And I think that really will determine which area and what kind of features this has.
Well, it's interesting because from the rumors we've seen, it would suggest consumer based off the colors. Apparently, it's supposed to come in colors, which I find very interesting. But what leads us to believe it's pro-focused is it's going to supposedly have the M1X chip inside, which is the Pro-end chip, and also a bunch of ports on the back. It's going to have HDMI, it's going to have USB-A, USB-C, Ethernet, that magnetic-style charging cable like we have on the iMac. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if that is the new redesign for all Mac Minis and they just have an M1 and M1X variant. That would make a whole lot of sense to me. If you want the colors for your home, grab the M1. If you want the better chip, you could do that. And honestly, that's the Mac that I would pick up because I love this MacBook Pro, but I'm always at my desk. I rarely ever have undocked it and taken it somewhere else. So for me, a new Mac Mini with an M1X, that is on my dream list. That is like the next computer I will get. Have you been holding out for an M1 computer or holding out for the M1X? And would you pick up one of these new Mac Minis or MacBook Pros?
I've been holding out in a way. I mean, my 16-inch MacBook Pro that I'm using is fine. There have been some hiccups lately that are kind of annoying, but it still works perfectly fine. It's not that old. The one that I'm really holding out for, and I will buy in an instant, is this semi-rumored Mac Pro, or sorry, let me say that again. Semi-rumored iMac Pro. These names, they all mix together at a certain point. But yeah, this was something we were expecting when they did the 24-inch iMac redesign, but that never came. So this rumored 32-inch iMac with either an M1X or an M2X, or I don't know what chip it's going to be at the time when it actually comes out, if it ever comes out. That is the computer I will buy as soon as it's available, unless it costs like $7,000, which it might. Who knows? You never know. Other than that, though, I mean, the other computers are interesting, but I'm not really holding out for them. The Mac Mini, I bought the M1 Mac Mini when it first came out, and I really loved it. I mean, I had never used a Mac Mini before that, so even though for a lot of people that was the easiest way to get into a Mac before the MacBook Air got cheap, that was the kind of cheap Mac that it was, what did they do on stage when they announced it? It was BYO.
Yep.
Bring your own keyboard,
KDM.
Mouse. Yeah.
Display.
Bring your own display, keyboard, and mouse. So it was just a box. You bring everything else. And I think that format really works well. So I'd be excited to see the new Mac Mini because, especially for the price, that thing is fairly inexpensive for what it can do. And especially with the rumors of like the size being smaller and the colors and all that, I'm really excited for it. I'm just not like clamoring for it. I'm really clamoring for that new iMac. What about you?
It's funny because I've seen so much clamoring for the MacBook Pros, and look, these look like they're great upgrades, and I love the MacBook Pro, but my use case just does not warrant a laptop. So Mac Mini all the way for me. Give me the ports, give me the new processor, and I'd be happy. I have no use for a mini LED display. I don't even care if it's ProMotion. If you want a good laptop, this is definitely the way to go, but I'm more excited for the new chips and sort of what the successor Macs will be with those M1Xs inside. Hopefully we do get that iMac Pro at some point and that new Mac Mini as well. And I mean, it's an exciting event, and don't get me wrong, but you could kind of sum it up in about 10 minutes about what we should see. So I'm very curious to see what they do announce alongside this stuff. I guess we did get a question to this effect. We did have someone ask about if we could possibly see some kind of, well, let me go back and refer to the question here, because I think it was, we haven't gotten a glimpse of the Apple VR glasses, and we really haven't gotten a glimpse of the Apple Car. kind of where do those projects stand? And then also kind of putting the U1 into more Apple products. I agree. I think the U1 should go in more Apple products. Hopefully the U1 chip makes its way to these new MacBook Pros as well. But it's just kind of interesting because I don't know. I'm excited for this event. I just don't know what else we're going to see. Maybe my expectations are just too high. And I think this MacBook Pro is still going to be great, but it seems like they could make this a very nice 30-minute event and then just be done with it.
Yeah, I mean, they could also stretch it out a little and make it into an exact hour long like they did for the September event. Although for the September event, they rushed everything so fast to squeeze it into an hour. They could just talk about the M1X. They give us every chart. Then they say, like, this thing comes in 6 colors. Here, look at all the colors, like all that kind of stuff. They could stretch it out to an hour. The question I have, though, another question kind of relating to this is, what do you think the lineup is going to look like either after this event or even after they finish the transition? So right now we have the M1 Mac Mini, we have the M1 MacBook Air, and the M1 13-inch MacBook Pro. Are they going to keep around that 13-inch MacBook Pro?
I heard someone, I don't know who was an analyst or something on Twitter that suggested that yes, they are. I don't see that happening. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I think that once the transition is complete, here's kind of my best case scenario and sort of my dream scenario. So at the low end, it is an M1 Mac Mini and then an M1X variant. So just the only change inside is the processor, same amount of ports, same design. You just get to kind of pick what you want in terms of performance. Then you'd have the new redesigned MacBook Air, which would probably have either a modified M1 or an M2. This is the one with all the colors. That's going to be sort of a nice new entry level into the Apple laptop space. That will be there at sort of the low end. Then as we sort of jump up a little higher, you have the MacBook Pro, obviously, in 14-inch and 16-inch. So if you want the MacBook Air and save some money, go with the M2. You want the higher end, go with the MacBook Pro. We have the iMac and then hopefully the iMac Pro, and that would hopefully have the M1X inside. And I would be surprised what the design of that would be, because I could totally see them just sort of making a bigger version and saying, hey, this is what you wanted, right? Here's a 30-inch with an M1X inside. So not sure if the design is going to be radically different or not, since they just kind of gave us a redesign. And then at the high end, you have the Apple Silicon Mac Pro, which is like an all-out beast that can do everything. So I think it's the same lineup we have now, but multiple variations with a pro-focused SKU and a consumer SKU. We've seen this with the iPad. We've seen it with the Apple Watch and the iPhone. Definitely think that's going to be the case moving forward with the Mac. What about you?
Yeah, that's what I think too. I think that lineup makes the most sense. I wonder how long they're going to keep around the Intel computers, because they still sell Intel variants of a lot of these designs. So that'll be interesting to see. Also, I really kind of like the whole angle that they're doing, where it seems like the consumer focus comes in a bunch of colors, and it has a more home focus. Like, it's really meant as a product that you can set in your home and be like happy with. Like, it blends in with the design. I got the M1. These names. I get confused with these names so often. But I got the 24-inch iMac with the M1 chip. I got a blue one, and that is sitting in my living room right now. And it looks great. Like, it is meant to be almost a fixture of your home. And I really like the angle that they're going with those, especially once we get the MacBook Airs, which are supposedly, I'm still convinced the MacBook Air is not the MacBook Air, but that's a whole different story. Especially when we get those computers with their different colors, the Mac Mini with the different colors, the iMac has different colors. Like, I think I like that angle. It's kind of an homage to back when they did the first iMac with all the different colors and all that. Now, yeah, I don't know where else I was going to say with that. I had a different point, but I don't know. I like the way this SKU is looking to turn out once it's done. It's just, I'm ready for it to happen now because I want those computers.
Yeah, and I think that this is where Apple's going, and I think that this is sort of the end of the year for Apple. I don't think we're going to see another event. I cannot imagine. If something doesn't launch at this event, I don't think it's going to launch before the end of the year. I don't think, is there anything they promised that didn't launch yet this year? I don't think so, besides like some software stuff. So
yeah, no.
This is it, right? This is kind of the last hurrah from Apple for the year. Then they're going to kind of go and relax a bit, and then go back to work on sort of what's coming next fall and even in the spring with iPhone SE 3 and iPhone 14 and all that stuff. But this is it. This is sort of the last big event of the year for Apple. Looks exciting. New MacBook Pros. Hopefully we get that Mac Mini. Apple Watch landing on Friday. Matt, looks like we did a pretty good job breaking down everything in a very concise time amount this week. Any final thoughts on this?
I got one more thing to add. One more speculation. Okay. What, for these new MacBook Pros, when are we going to see them? And what do we think pricing is going to be? Is it going to be the same as what we have now?
Yeah, I think pricing will be very similar, if not in line with what we have right now. And I think that they will launch, well, I mean, we've heard production on them has been ramping up for quite some time. So maybe they launch at the end of the week. That would be another reason to steal some press from Google and also bury the Apple Watch Series 7 even more.
That's true. That's one way to do it.
But I could see them doing it like at the end of the month or November. I could see them sort of spreading it out a little bit. But I would say sooner than later. I don't think they're going to announce it and then push it till December. I think they want those Christmas sales. Now that the back-to-school crowd has gone and they've got all that inventory done, and now they want to get with pros. And also, I guess, professionals looking to spend budgets before the end of the year. Yeah. Definitely think it's going to happen. I'd say late October, early to mid-November at the latest is my prediction.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, and I'm thinking the prices will be the same. And that the prices being the same is what maybe leads me to believe they will keep around the 13-inch MacBook Pro, keep that as the lower cost option for people who want a Pro machine, even though it's the same as a MacBook Air. Like, get the MacBook Air, guys. But yeah, that all sounds about right. Yeah, I'm excited to try them out. I just don't know if I'm going to be getting one for myself personally, but it'll be interesting to see the resurrection of the MacBook Pro, if you will. Like, this really seems like Apple listened, and the MacBook Pro is going to be the computer everyone really wanted when they released the 2016 MacBook Pro redesign. This seems like they're fixing everything, and it's finally going to be here.
Yeah, Apple got a lot of criticism for many years that they were iPhone focused, and the Mac line was neglected, and they had the whole Back to the Mac event and can't innovate anymore, my bleep. And obviously, Apple cares about the Mac a lot. And this kind of shows that give them some time to work their magic. But man, it's coming back with a vengeance, new design, fixing all the issues, new processor. Apple is sort of putting the PC market to shame, and I cannot wait to see everything released at this event. And of course, we will have a full recap of this event next Friday on the Apple Circle podcast. We'll see how true. I think we've been around the block enough and have done enough of these events. I think we're going to be pretty close with our predictions here, but we will see if there's any surprise one more things that could just totally change everything. But I think that wraps us up, Matt, for the week. As always, we want to hear from you guys. If you guys have questions, comments, if you watch the event and then you want some buyer's guide information, you want to know which one you should go with, you can text or call that Apple Circle hotline to 949-354-3508. Of course, we've got a YouTube channel of the Apple Circle podcast as well with clips and full-length video episodes. So if you want to watch us and not just listen to us, you can check that out linked in the description of this podcast. I think that about does it for us this week, Matt. Thank you as always. And see you guys next week.
See ya.